Hey, this is Garrett from KWC, and this is the finale of Hotline Miami. This isn't really a Let's Play. There will be some footage of the game in the background, but this is more a review of the game and what I thought. Basically, Hotline Miami is a 2D top-down action video game. It was made by Donation Games, and it was released in late 2012 for the PC. It's a really fun game. I think the best part is probably the music. There's a lot to this game that I still don't really understand, but the plot is probably where I think the game suffers, even though it was nominated for Best PC Story, or Best PC Game Story of the Year by a few, I think by IGN and some other things. Hotline Miami is a very gruesome, very violent video game set in the late 80s in Miami. You play a unnamed man who wears different masks to kill people, and you elaborate on the story along the course of the game. Fans refer to the player as Jacket due to his symbolic Letterman's jacket that he wears. The different masks gives you different upgrades and abilities. Personally, I found the game to be a bit confusing, but also I kind of felt like it was a puzzler. It was very strategic, and you definitely had to plan out how you were going to get through each level. The game was difficult, to say the least. Definitely the most trouble I've had in a game in a long while, and I definitely would say that there are points where I had to set the game down, got a little bit too frustrated, and basically had to take a breather. Overall, the gameplay is super simple. Basically, there's a set of baddies or thugs or whatever you'd consider them to be in a level of a building, and you can come in sometimes with weapons depending on your mask or whatever, and you use melee and guns to kill them and get to the next level of the house. The game is set up into chapters, and that's basically how it works. You wake up, and then like the first level you wake up, you answer a phone, and then you go to the place and murder people. The music in the game, the soundtrack is amazing, and you can buy it on Steam along with the game or separate if you want. It reminds me of like Beverly Hills Cop and some other things like that. It's a very retro, techno-y soundtrack that really heightens as you progress in the game and really makes you get into the way the game is played. On top of that, the sound effects, so I was like, what am I going to talk about? The sound effects are pretty good. I would say some of they're a little dull, but I also think that's because of the graphics, and the graphics are amazing. They're not like pristine, futuristic, awesome. No, it's just a nice like 16-bit is what I would consider it. Like a nice 16 or maybe like 32-bit top-down game. Very reminiscent of the original Grand Theft Autos on like PlayStation and stuff like that. Personally, I had tons of fun with the game. The gameplay is definitely where this game thrives, and however, I would say if I had to add something to the game that was not in it, it would be the fact that there is no arcade mode. I think that would have been a great addition, because once you're done with the game, you can play the same levels over again with additional stuff. Like if you want to go back to the first level with all of the upgrades or whatever, you can. But I really felt like it could have used like an arcade mode, like a challenge kind of thing. But really, the place where I personally think it's not very good is the story. It's very confusing, and especially while doing a Let's Play, I didn't watch most of the cutscenes. But even that, I'm not sure whether... I think there's several ways that there's conflict in the game, but I really don't know which one the game is surfaced on. But I did do some reading, and I know that there's like a secret ending that really tells you what the game's about, and some other things. There's definitely lots of collectibles, and by lots I mean there is one collectible, and it is basically there's like little pills, I would call them, or they're like letter pieces. And but yes, it's a great game. I would also say it kind of lacks in repetition. However, each level is now new and challenging, and having different, you get to use a different upgrade, or you have to kill harder enemies, or whatever. You do feel like by the end of the game, I've done the same thing over and over again. Or maybe not by the end of the game, halfway through the game. Towards the end of the game, you really finally kind of get to do different things, which kind of make it a little more exciting. The gameplay, or the game, what I would consider the game, is definitely an action shooter. However, I do think, again, it strongly relies on a puzzle aspect. You do have to think through, you can't just run in and shoot. Well, you can, but it's not very effective, and you should probably think through how you're going to do things. Other than that, it's very gruesome. I would think that's one of the places where it could probably maybe step it down a notch, is in how violent the game is. But I think it went over well. I think they did a good job of handling it in the way they did, but it could have had less of that in it. As a whole, I would give the game a pretty good review. I would say it lacks the story. It's very confusing, but I think if you tried hard enough, that's something to get through. The gameplay is fun, but once you've done it once or twice, it's kind of repetitive. And as a whole, I think the music is the best part. So I give it a worth looking at. That's basically what I say. Go check it out on Steam.